Hello guys, my name is Michael. We are going to move on to a new widget today. We are going to learn new things which we can add to our projects and to help us when we are going to create our applications. So today we are going to talk about GTKScale. What exactly does this thing, we are going to talk in a second. So let us go back a little bit to our spin button. Do you remember when we were creating this spin button? Then we had this opportunity to set some values here through an adjustment. Anyway, adjustment is not a important part now here. It is also not important the value or the values which are working with this spin button. It is important now only the spin button itself. So what does this thing here? As we already know, it is a widget which help us to set some values through these two buttons right here. And of course, as you already know, it is not just a way to set some values between these two buttons. Was also possible for us to set some values by typing them directly here. And basically this is a thing which makes difference between a spin button and a scale button. How about if you want to create a button? Let's take for example this volume button right here, where you want or you need to restrict your user which runs your application to just drag this button here from a value to another one without letting the user to type something, to type a value. Maybe you don't want to handle all this text right here or these possible things which a user, let's say he tries to or she tries to type here, which give you a lot of work into your application. How about if you want to create a thing like this one here, where it's maybe safer, maybe it's not, maybe you still need a spin button, but let's say if you don't need something like this where a user can type a value. Of course you can disable this option here, it works. Of course you can set here things like letting the user to type only numbers, but how about if you don't want to work with this part here, only to something like in the volume control here? How will you do that? Well, for such things they are already ready for you, ready to be used, and it is called GTK Scale. Let us check it, and as you can see on the right corner here, on the right side, you have two tiny things which are looking, let's say, the same like our volume button right here. One it's horizontal and the other one it's vertical. Okay, so let us check what this means. Description says a GTKScale is a slider control used to select a numeric value. To use it, you'll probably want to investigate the methods on its base class. GtkRange, we already talked a little bit in the last video. We are going to talk more. In addition to the methods for GTKScale itself, it is what we are going to set these things with GtkRange. Okay, so to set the value of a scale, you would normally use GtkRange set value. We are going to come to this part too, because like I said, GtkRange is just an object, and it's not kind of object which you created. There is no such things like GtkRange new. It is just a base class for widgets, like for example this one right here, GTKScale in our case. So to detect changes to the value, you will normally use value changes signal. Okay, so this signal, it is also a thing. I don't know if it is right here or it belongs to scale. Yes, of course, the scale itself doesn't have this signal, but it doesn't need it also because the scale derives from GTK range, so basically those signals are there. We are going to talk about those things too. Note that using the same upper and lower bounds for GTKScale through the GTK range methods will hide the slider itself. This is useful for applications that want to show an undeterminate value on the scale without changing the layout of the application, such as a movie or music player. There are some functions which we are going to talk about them, and later, very later, we are going to use them in our tutorials or our videos. Okay, so GTK has a GTK builder. We are not going to talk about this. As you can see, we have some CSS nodes here. The main one is the scale, and then we have marks, level, indicator, and so on. Through, slider, highlight, fill, and of course it is the button and the top one. We are not going to talk about them. Instead, we are going back up here. We are going to check again object hierarchy. As you can see, GTKScale, it is derived from GTK range. This is very important to know. Okay, so that being said, here are our functions which we are going to work with them. Of course, I already prepared some of them which we are going to talk today. So the first one will be GTKScale new. Let us check it, and says creates a new GTKScale, of course, and takes two parameters and returns a widget. The parameters are the scale orientation. This means, you see here we have two possible ways to create them: horizontal and vertical. So basically this is what says here the scale's orientation, and of course an adjustment. We already know what adjustment is, so we are not going to talk about it. So that being said, let us create the adjustment because we need this adjustment. So let us GTK widget adjustment. Okay, now we are going to create the adjustment. So we are going to say adjustment. We are pointing to GTK adjustment new, and we are going to say for value 0, for lower also 0, for upper we are going to say 10, for page step increment we are going to say 1, for step increment we are going to say 2, and for page size we are going to say 0. So now we created our adjustment. Now we can move on and create the scale. This means we need, of course, a new widget pointer, GTK widget, our scale, and then we are going to point our scale to GTKScale new. And as you can see, it takes two parameters. The first one is the orientation. Let us see what's the story with orientation. And as you can see, there are two of them. So this means we are going to take the horizontal, the first one, to check it. Okay, so GTK orientation horizontal, and the second one, as you already know, it is our adjustment. Okay, so now we are going to GTK to add it, container add GTK container window is the parent and the child is the scale. That being said, if everything is fine, it should compile and run without problems. And we have a small problem. Let's see where the problem is. The problem is assignment to a widget. Of course, yes, because adjustments return an adjustment, not a widget. GTK adjustment. Sorry, my bad. Okay, I fix it. Okay, I'm compiling here, run it again, and we have still another problem. Yes, because we need a comma here and not a dot. Finally, we can compile it. And as you can see, what do we have here? We have a scale right here, which we can drag it from 0 to 10, and of course we have its value right up here. Okay, so that being said, this is the scale. Let us check the other option, GTK orientation vertical. So now we are saying create GTK scale new with orientation vertical and the adjustment we already created. Let's see what happens. And now, as you can see, here it is. Now you need to know something. When you create a vertical adjustment, by default, and I repeat, this happens only by default. By default, because we are going to see some things which we can change, but by default, let me go back a little bit to horizontal, then watch. The orientation of the scale, it is from left to right based on the value where the button is set. So being value set to 0, this means the scale button starts from left and goes up to right. So basically here is 0 and here is 10. Okay, now when you are creating an orientation in vertical mode, you will see something which maybe you won't understand. You see, this is the vertical button here, our vertical scale, and our button is up here and not down here, maybe as you are expecting it to be. Yes, it is. So basically when you are down here it is 0, when you are up here it is 10, and when you are up here it is 0. This kind of change things you can change them. Anyway, just to let you know. And as you can see, we said we have a value, and of course having this value, it is now on the top part. We are going to change it back to horizontal for a moment, and then we are going to proceed to the next function. And the next function, it is GTKScale. Let me mark it as done. GTKScale set draw value. What does this function GTK set draw value? So it specifies whether the current value is displayed as a string next to the slider. The default value is true. So basically this means if that value which is shown, this one right here, which is changed all the time when you move the slider, this one should appear. Maybe you don't want to have it. Some people they need it, some they don't. So how will you do that? So I'm going to set the draw value. Not property. Let's say option. This means this, as you already saw, takes two parameters. First the scale, and the second one is our Boolean option, true or false. The default one is true. We saw what happens. GTK scale. So we are going to put false this time here, just to see what happens. And as you can see, we have only the scale itself, but we have no value anymore. So basically this is what does this thing. Maybe if you are asking yourself, why should I need something like this? I don't know. How about if you create a music player where you have your equalizer, where you create some those let's say settings for creating the sound adjustment. You're adjusting the sound, and you have, as you already know, the bass, the treble, and the high. And you want to let your user just to go up and down or left to right. Or maybe if you need to create the music player buffer where it plays the song all the time and moves and moves and moves and moves until end. So there you don't need a value, isn't it? Or maybe you need. Who knows how you are going to design your programs in the future. Anyway, you know how it is, you know what it is, and you know how it works. So I'm going to set it to true, which defaults to true. And then we are going to proceed to next one. The next one will be set the value position. Okay, so basically if we decide to have this value because we need it, then how about if we set it to a better position? I mean, do I have to have it all the time right there? No, you don't. You can set it to a different position. So sets the position in which the current value is displayed. So the first parameter is the scale and the second is the position. We're going to call this function set the position of the value, I'm going to call it. So the first one is our GTK scale, so I'm going to copy this part right here, and the second one, it is the position itself. So let us check it. Right click on it, open link in new tab, and as you can see we have this for GTK positions, which at this moment you should already know about them. Let's see what happens. So if we put it on the left side, as you can see the values is right here at the beginning. If you set it to right, then as you can see the value is at the very end of the slider. The settings happens if you set it to top, which I think is the default one. It doesn't say, but maybe if we go to properties, drop value position, and the value position says top. Yes. So basically the default one is the tops. So what we saw already, our value, it is right here. And of course there is the last one, which is the bottom one, which is of course under our scale, or after, right here, you see. Okay, so of course it looks a little bit ugly, and the distance from here to here is huge, and that's happened because of the expanding of the scale. We are using the scale inside of a window. I could use a grid, but it's not the case for just a widget to create also a grid, just for showing you. Now let us go back a little bit to our GTKScale new function, and let us change its orientation. So we had vertical, I'm going horizontal, I'm going to change it to vertical, I'm going to change it to top, so which defaults. And now before we move, we go a little bit back to position, and now watch, I'm going to run the program. As you can see here, you see it better, it is on the top, it stays on the top no matter how you change it. Here you see better these changes, right? Set this on the right here, left will be here, and the bottom will be down there. So now you understand it better. It is right here. Okay, I wanted to show you just to understand it again. I'm going to change again to horizontal. Okay, so that being said, this thing was what GTK scale value position does. Now let us move to the next and the last function for this video. The next ones we are going to talk in the other video, and this is the GTK scale set digits. Well, let's see. First things first. GTK scale set digits right here says set the number of decimal places that are displayed in the value. Also cause the value of the adjustment to be rounded to this number of digits. So the retrieve value matches the display one if draw value is true. Of course, because if you set draw value to false, we have no value, so there is no meaning of these digits. If it's true, when the if you want to enforce rounding the value when the draw value is false, you can set the round digits instead. This is another story. Okay. So note that rounding to a small number of digits can interfere with the smooth auto-scrolling that is built into GTK scale. As another, you can use the format value. We are going to talk about this too. Okay, so basically it is a function which does nothing, takes two parameters. The first argument of this function will be the scale, and the second one will be how many digits. Let us go a little bit back to our program and compile it and run it again. And let me put the value at the top. Now watch. You see, when I'm trying to move the slider, the values change. Also, not just the value, but the value itself has also a digit. This number right here, which is 3. This is the digit which basically it's set as default. Now this kind of behavior we can change it by calling GTK scale digits. So basically the first one is the scale, and the second how many digits. Let us try with 3 of them. Let's see what happens. And now, as you can see, we don't have only one digit like before, 0, 0. We have this time 0,3 zeros. So this is a better precision. This is a perfect precision, if you want to call it like this. This is very, very important. This is a very, very, very important to know, and to can basically this can let's say have a better view of your scale in much better, or let's say a better accuracy for adjustments which you want to set through this scale to your application. That is very important. Okay, so that being said, it's enough for today. It's enough for this video. It's enough information which we used. We are going to talk in the next coming tutorials about the other functions. We are going to learn some funny things when we are working with this. There are things which you need to know, the way you create, the way you work with your scale, what is good, what is not. I mean, there are some things which you're going to see that if you are not going to set them, then you come into one position where you will need to set them even if you don't need them, and so on. Okay, so until then, thank you guys for watching. If you like it, please subscribe, share with your friends and neighbors, and until next time, see you guys.